Welcome, welcome, one and all. Thank you for making the time to come to the round table, the Anti-Racist in Action round table, discussing celebrations and lessons from Alabama Brawl, Alabama Boat Brawl, Montgomery Boat Brawl, the Empire Fights Back, Battle of the Sweet Tea Party, and the list goes on and on. Bloody Saturday. There's a whole list that our community has created in terms of the names to remember and remark upon this special day. So listen, if you're calling in from Twitter, hey Queen, go ahead and put in the room chats, your thoughts and what you're repping, who you are, and sort of feel free to use freely the comment section of the room. And if you're out there on YouTube, do the same thing. Post your comments. Talk about, who you are. Shout yourself out and who you're repping and what you're up to tonight. Maybe you are winding down the day. And then, free to use the chat because we're just going to be in community tonight and collectively process what happened on Saturday. So welcome, welcome, welcome. And we're just going to give folks a couple more minutes to trickle into the room and then we will get into it in earnest. All right. In the meantime, go ahead and ping friends, family, loved ones to the space, and we will get into it in a bit. All right. Yes, Melinda, repping Detroit. And then just enjoy a little bit of Bob Marley just to ease us into the conversation. All right. Nothing like Uncle Bob to get us all ready to get into all of it, right? That's right, Buffalo Soldier. And that becomes very relevant as we have this conversation and we talk about the historical context for what happened in Alabama on this Saturday, don't you think? So you are welcome on Twitter. You're welcome to request to be a speaker and join on the platform. And I see that Miss Melinda is already letting us know her thoughts. Alabama did muck around and mound out, all right, for sure. And so let me introduce myself. It's been a minute. It will take an event of of this proportion to bring me out of fake retirement, which totally fake retirement, but fake retirement or pseudo retirement for my academicians. And for those who get so busy with the other aspects of life that some aspect of life just got to be put on the shelf for a second so you could just like keep head above water in the other areas of life. But that doesn't mean that that ever goes away. There is always room for that. And this peace is so important to me for my mental and spiritual and emotional health. I have to be in community, even if virtually, to be able to process and collectively unpack the things that are going around in our culture so that I myself can can survive and thrive in spite of and within the happenings, right? It is never a dull moment being black, as we know. And so and it becomes even more of a celebration when we are in community. So with that being said, as a way of reintroduction, my name is Dr. Ijeoma Nodim Opara, and my mission in life is to eliminate the structures and systems of white supremacism as a myth, a delusional myth that it is, inside of healthcare, public health, and the sciences and academia, while centering and celebrating Black magic, Black brilliance, Black abundance, Black joy. That is what I was put on earth to do. And that is what I try to do in all my efforts as a mother, as a wife, as a community leader and organizer, as an activist, but also as an internal medicine and pediatric physician, assistant professor, educator, etc. So with that being said, I am proud founder and creator of the Anti-Racism in Action Roundtable. And we are a collective, an interprofessional, interdisciplinary collective of Black folks who are unapologetically Black in our analysis of everyday occurrences and events and how we unpack and go through those experiences collectively together to power the work that we do of liberation, ultimately, right? To inform how we move inside of anti-racism, inside of abolition, inside of liberation, ultimately. And all these things are connected. And so, as a think tank, as a community of experts from across multiple fields, this is what we do. And this is an example. I want to, in absentia, just shout out Sister Lana, my partners in power, Sister Lana James, Sister Nisi Johnson. I want to shout out Brother Benny, who will be joining us in a little bit. But we get started because we said we're going to get started. So with that being said, let's get into it. Hashtag Alabama Brawl. So again, go ahead and put in the comments, and you out there in Twitter, go ahead and feel free to also add to the comments or request to speak and get up on the stage and share your thoughts. And I want to first of all start with a recap, like what happened, right? And then pull out some pieces that I've been sitting with and reflecting on and share those thoughts while inviting you to go ahead and comment on these thoughts, ideas, as well as your own takeaways, your own experiences of the event. All right. And so I am going to be referencing Guardian. I love Guardian News, The Guardian, as a news outlet, one of my favorite outlets, The Guardian and The Atlantic. All right. And then the New York Times and them come after that. But these two outlets, for me, I found incredibly helpful. And generally, now keep in mind, media is media. But these two outlets have been generally, they try to keep it real. They really do, where especially we are concerned, because, again, the power of narrative is key. And that's another reflection here. As usual, whenever we are anything that impacts us or affects us some kind of way, the questions around what is the narrative, how does the narrative reinforce myths of white supremacism and anti-Blackness? And how does the narrative combat those myths that have been codified and buried inside the collective American psyche? And then often, again, media, that's why I said, media, right, as an agent of that, right? So in what ways do the narratives inside of media support and reinforce myths of Black criminality and Black pathology, right? And uplift white innocence, quote unquote, and of course, white privilege. So what kinds of ways the media narrative of events that involve us, or even if they don't involve us, but still like serve as agents of reinforcing those two tenets and scaffolds of white supremacism, right, and anti-Blackness. And then in what ways could they be agents to dismantle those systems? So it's just always important to think in those terms when encountering and engaging systems, whether it's the media and entertainment system, the systems of healthcare and public health, systems of police and criminal justice or justice, the systems of sports, the systems of athletics, the systems of the finance and the economy, education, foodways, housing, transportation, name it. In what ways are behaviors, policies, ideas, practices, processes, right, reinforcing white supremacism or dismantling white supremacism? In what ways are they reinforcing anti-Blackness or upholding Blackness, right, and celebrating and centering Blackness, or dismantling anti-Blackness? Like really, because these are the threads that ultimately form the fabric of the United States and frankly the Americas in general. So that's an aside, but not really, right? But it's a ways to always be in the ways that we think and engage and consume the news or consume the events of society, always having that critical thinking hat that answers asks and answers those questions is so important. So this will be woven through our conversation today. But again, to recap for and level set for those who are like, oh, so what happened again? And I'm going to give you like benefit of the doubt because many of us be working them jobs. Many of us have 6, 7, 10 jobs. All right. Some are paid, some are unpaid, some are just the grind. So I get it. I get it. You are busy. Some folks are just taking care of themselves and taking a break because as Black folks surviving white supremacy and structural anti-Blackness, we have to constantly be mindful of our mental and emotional health care and practicing taking breaks. So maybe this was your weekend to do that. So you didn't catch what was going on. You're like, why is everyone laughing? What are all these memes? What is going on? What is this white folding chair doing all over my timeline? Right? Okay, so what had happened was on Saturday, all right, August the 7th, 20 and the 23. What happened was in Montgomery, Alabama, essentially, there was a platoon boat, a pontoon, I'm sorry, platoon is a military term, but a pontoon boat was prevented from, let me start over again because I'm looking at the Guardian article here. And so why don't I just read it? Maybe that'll just be easy. Don't you think so? I think so. Okay. So according to the Guardian, it reads, a dramatic brawl on the Montgomery, Alabama riverfront pitted people standing up for a Black riverboat worker against a group of white people who began beating him for telling them to move their illegally parked pontoon. That Saturday night fight, which was captured in multiple videos posted on social media, appeared to unfold largely along racial lines, and many social media users celebrated footage of the riverfront dust-up, which showed the white assailants get the tables turned on them by Black people who rushed to the riverboat workers' aid. All right. And so what they also said, kind of going forward a little bit, the brawl appeared to start when a pontoon boat prevented a larger riverboat from docking. When a Black riverboat worker objected and tried to get things in order, he was attacked by a group of white men. The conflict then escalated when a group of about 6 Black men from the riverboat confronted the white party. They were cheered on by bystanders. They beat 3 white men and 2 women, at least one of whom could be seen first striking others by running up and throwing her body into them from behind. And the rest of it goes on and on and on. But essentially, the bottom line of it was that a Black dock worker, right, at the docks on the docks of in Montgomery, on the riverfront, Alabama riverfront, was trying to get some order together because a boat that was, led by or containing and owned by or whatever, but white folks refused to move to make room for an incoming boat. And not only were the white owners of this boat insistent on not moving, they had the nerve to proceed immediately to physical violence by descending on this Black dock worker, who immediately recognized the situation for what it was, because he may have been born at night, but he wasn't born last night, and proceeded to throw up his cap in the universally, globally recognized Negro signal for help, all right, and started to hold down the fort for a little bit, knowing his brothers and sisters were eventually going to do what they need to do. And lo and behold, from the waters, the air, the soil, and all elements, fire, earth, nitrogen, right? Negroes just appeared ready, right? The original Avengers to take over the situation and get things together, all right? And they did in all kinds of ways, like you can see in the memes that have, taken over our timelines. And this whole event, and they beat the assailants, the white assailants, properly and thoroughly. And you can see them. You have videos of them fleeing because, again, when you stand up to a bullies, that's exactly what they do. Is they go ahead and flee. And our people said, I don't know, but yeah, we're gonna go ahead and continue this, not just for today, but for all the yesterdays and the potential futures where you might consider stepping outside your mind and repeating this travesty. And that's what they did. So I believe that our people beat those individuals for yesterday, today, and tomorrow. All right. They beat them for the whole entire weekend. This week coming up, next month, September, the rest of 2023, and the decade forthcoming, because our people generally don't play. So, with that being said, that is the recap. And as we get into the analysis of the situation, I want to welcome my brother Benny to the stage, who is just every good thing. Every good thing, I'm telling you, is brother, and we're going to collectively unpack and process. But brother Benny, go ahead and say hi to your people and introduce yourself as a reintroduction. I was telling the folks before you jumped up that, it had to take an event of this magnitude to get me out of fake retirement. And but this, I tell you what, God will restart you in your purpose one way or the other. Ain't that right? But go ahead and tell us, brother, break down the brilliance that you are, and let the people will be reintroduced to you.
Having me, and it's been a minute since we've been together, so I've missed you, and it's so great to see you. Welcome, everybody. My name is Benias.
Brother Benny, can you unmute your
screen? It's been a minute since we've been together, so I've missed you, and it's so great to see you. Welcome, everybody.
You're good. There's actually a delay. There's a delay, so your voice.
Benny, can you unmute your screen? I missed you, and it's okay. Absolutely. Give me one second.
It is. I think you will get better with time. Just keep going.
Okay. Man, it was great to watch, all these wild people catch these hands, because they thought they were gonna they thought that they were gonna get over the wrong person, and that just did not happen this time. So that was brilliant for me. But ultimately, my head was going to the whole "Not in My Small Town," that song by the person that we don't even need to name. And to me, this self-defense, this demonstration of self-defense, and Black people just coming together to take care of business, that's really what we need to keep showing. All these wild people catch these hands, because they thought they were gonna, they thought that they were gonna get over the wrong person, and that just did not happen. Ultimately, my head was going to the whole "Not in My Small Town," that song by the person that we don't even need to name. And to me, this self-defense and Black people just coming together, towing. All right, how about now? Can we hear me on both sides? But yeah, I thought that was exactly what we need to start showing, because these folks think, we're just respond to things in a.
Thank you, brother. You know what? I don't know what the issue is, but we are definitely having some issues of a StreamYard. So I'm going to take you out of the StreamYard and for now, and then we'll just kind of just work with Twitter for now until I figure that out. But I appreciate that. You let me know. If there's any issues. Miss Melinda, if you're still out there, let me know if you can hear Brother Benny off of the Twitter in the comments. Or you can send me a text, and so that we know where we need to adjust. But I hear you, Brother Benny, just talking about that and sort of this secondhand joy. So we talk often about vicarious trauma, and secondary trauma, right? And how we for a long time have been and continue to be inundated with videos and other representation of Black trauma and violence against Black bodies, right? And that we are all collectively impacted by these experiences. What happens to one of us essentially happens to all of us in a very real way, not just in a spiritual, cultural way, but in the actual visceral, measurable, tangible way in our very bodies, right? In our very minds and mindsets and mood, etc., from a mental health standpoint, but also from a physical health standpoint. So we talk often about vicarious trauma, secondary trauma, tertiary trauma. We don't talk enough about vicarious joy and how the witness of justice and the witness of when we and people, members of our community, stand up for themselves and speak up or succeed or thrive in what kind of all kinds of ways, how it impacts us, like in the reverse, right? That we derive incredible mental health, spiritual, emotional, cultural, physical health and well-being benefits from that it is truly a collective experience, both in the positive but also in the negative, but also in the positive way. So Irina, so I really appreciate you lifting that piece up and also talking about, well, then how do we, like, we need to translate that energy forward. So we're going to get there for sure. I want to take us back a bit, and as we are walking through exactly, because you established the present, but then also branching out to the future, and next steps and sort of translations. But even while we stay here, as in everything that we do here on the roundtable, we talk about the impact or the role of history, and just to kind of pause around Montgomery, Alabama, and the role of Montgomery, Alabama, here. I mean, the irony of it. And I especially am moved, pardon me, my dad was calling me on the phone. So I'm especially moved to do that because of some folks, brothers and sisters whom I love very much too, and it's understandable. However, interesting, but that where some folks have found the audacity, as my people would say, the liver, to make the comments, we are not our ancestors. And I find that term very, very problematic, or that phrasing very, very problematic. We are not our ancestors. And so from a historical standpoint, that exact dock, that riverfront area, we know was a very popular slave auction block, right? That was a very popular slave auction block, that coast off of Alabama River, that exact location where enslaved Africans will be brought, through the Alabama River, dropped off on this slave auction block, and then transported down Commerce Street to Court Square markets where they were sold. This very location of the Alabama Sweet Tea Party, or Bloody Saturday, or the Blampire Strikes Back, all the names that Black Theater has baptized this event with, was the location where enslaved Africans were sold, so much so that depots were built in the area to hold that such incredible volume. They had to build depots to warehouse African bodies to be sold and to be sort of, again, warehoused, so that then they are marched up and down, Commerce Street to Court Square Market to be sold. That was the location where Black folks came together in an organic Avengers real life movie to say, not today. And so that, Brother Benny, how do you sit with that history? How do you sit with that sort of significance? But also noting that, let's be clear, and I have compassion for my people who do espouse this fallacy of we are not our ancestors. Well, no, we're not, right? Because our ancestors, right, had to go through what they had to go through so that we can be here to deal with. I mean, still some similar shit, but not on the same level that they had to deal with, and they still fought, right? Because again, given Florida, Texas, and many places that are attacking world history, American history, Black history, just straight up truth and facts, right? That we are not taught our history to know that the history of oppression lies side by side with the history of rebellion and revolution. Our ancestors always fought throughout the diaspora, from the continent to the Caribbean to the Americas and Europe. They always fought. They were not passive. Please don't be disrespectful any more than you want your descendants to disrespect you in the 2023. Talking about, well, no, we're not quiet and passive now, and neither were the people on whose shoulders we stand on. They fought in so many ways, from just surviving, which is a fight in and of itself, given the context and the circumstances that they had to exist within, to literally fighting for their lives, attacking, running away, whatever and what have you. They did that and more. So we just really need to be careful in the ways in which we have swallowed the narrative that is false around the truth of who we are as Black peoples and our ancestors, to actually believe that, oh, we are not. No, we are. We wish we were like the people that set it up for us to be alive today. So I just want to lift that up. Like when we think about that location, literally being the location of the slave auction blocks, where so many enslaved Africans were housed and warehoused before being marched up Commerce Street to Court Square Market to be sold like chattel, sold like groceries, sold like chairs and tables, sold like horses and goats and sheep, and even less than that. And that on that same location, we have hashtag Montgomery boat brawl. I think that it really bears critical reflection. Brother Benny, what do you think? What are your thoughts?
No, I completely agree with you, especially on the statements that many people make around "we are not our ancestors." That is literal revisionist history, right? We are here today because of our ancestors, right? Because of their resistance. And to say that we're different from our ancestors, oh, we're not going to turn the other cheek, that's not what ever happened. And I completely agree with you. It's the lack of knowledge of self, the lack of knowledge about our history, and it's the reason why they continue to ban history, right? Because when we don't know our history, then we're using talking points, literally white supremacist talking points, to even back up our own pride, right, of getting justice back. Yeah, and I kind of feel the same way about I'm my ancestors' wildest dream. I kind of feel kind of weird about that too, because it's like I know we say that when we reach high prominent positions, and we're like, oh, these were not available to our ancestors, but our ancestors' wildest dream was the freedom that they created for us to even attain these things. And so to me, there's a lot of credit that we're failing to give due to our lack of knowledge of self, knowledge of history. But with regards to the location of this brawl, man, the ancestors were supplying the internet ass whooping. That's all I can say, right? Because that was, oh my god, that was a whole nother, that was something else. And so when I read about the history, like that profoundly impacted the way I took this whole story, because it's almost like that ass whooping, it was not just for the people who are messing up currently, but it's just like, nah, like you have some, I got some beat downs that I gotta carry on from a couple of generations ago. So it really, like, and even the intergenerational aspect of it, right? Because you saw that young boy swimming, literally swimming to the dock so that he can help out. You saw, people from all ages, and man, it was powerful, but it also makes me want to, think about the next steps of how can we show up for each other, not only when, it's a physical fight, but when some of these, fights that we're going through are not as visible to others, right? There's a lot of economic injustice that we're dealing with, and there's a lot of health disparities that we're dealing with, right? So how do we show up for each other during those moments equally the way we showed up for each other when, these group of men were attacking us? Because the way I see it, these are all interconnected. The violence is interconnected, and we always focus on interpersonal violence in this country whenever we ever talk about violence. We never speak enough about structural violence, right? The violence of, economic injustice, the violence of capitalism, the violence of, the health disparities and the lack of access to healthcare. We don't talk about the violence of, the school to prison pipeline and how we can't even learn our own history in these schools. But we always want to talk about interpersonal violence. And the only way we want to solve the interpersonal violence is through investing in policing, right? When the real violence is the fact that you're defunding our communities and the very thing that they need in order to thrive and be well. So to me, like, as much as we focused on the violence and, the fighting for justice for our people with, the interpersonal violence that we witness, I want to see how we can show up for each other when it comes to these other violences that we, don't often consider as, violent enough, or maybe it's hard to, say who the violence is coming from because we like to codify things as being like, oh, that's market forces. That's not gentrification. That's not people's, greed actively pushing out of your housing. That's market forces. And so, yeah, I think we got to just get focused in and see how, these systems are acting violence on us, and how can we come together to whoop they asses, because that's where I'm ready to go for, right? Like, I'm always about these systems. Individuals, yeah, like, a couple of bad apples, we'll get them. But how do we go about the ideologies that are being widespread, and plaguing, our communities? And so that's kind of where my brain goes to.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you totally hit the nail on the head, all the heads. And by the way, before I go into it, and thank you, Brother Benny, again, shout out to Dr. Ashley in the building, Dr. Arnaldo, Ingrid, I said Ingrid, but Iridescence, Sister Chi, Chinchilla, is this Chinchilla? I see you. I see you, Ashe Akebu, Tabang Walona. I see you, TW, Tree Law enthusiast. So welcome to the space, and thank you for being here. And you are welcome to request the speaking feature and join us to speak. Absolutely. And thank you. Use your emojis and come on the this is your time. This is your collective time. Myself and Brother Benny, we're just like co-processing, but you are welcome to speak. If you're out there on YouTube, thank you for taking the time to join. Go ahead and put the, go nuts on the comments, and I'll be responding and shouting out. If you have questions or thoughts, ideas, comments, feedback, go ahead and celebrations or lessons you've heard. Our Brother Benny has been challenging us as he's been sharing, how do we translate this on a larger scale? And that's very, very deep. And I want to get into that. And I want you to share your thoughts as well. Go ahead, use the comments on Twitter or for the space, but also here on YouTube. And again, you are welcome to request to speak anytime. So Brother Benny has challenged us in terms of violence, and you are right on the money. And another common sort of, again, misguided thought process that I've heard has been that, violence is not the answer. Violence is not the answer. But to your point, we say that because we have a very limited, immature, juvenile idea of what violence is. And again, to some degree, I always hold compassion for misunderstandings. That's why I stay an educator. That's why I still, occupy spaces of education and speak to it, because I know there's such an incredible campaign of misinformation and miseducation and disinformation. And y'all know the difference, right? Disinformation, just intentional wrong information that is propagated among the people to achieve a nefarious agenda. And whereas misinformation is, there's not so much that underlying nefarious intentionality, and can easily, when you provide correct information, be corrected, and be addressed. However, with disinformation, they sometimes know the correct information, but that's not their problem. They are trying to achieve some nefarious end. So the approach there isn't correct information. The approach there is just to dismantle, hold them accountable, and get rid of whatever it is that opposes and supports them. Okay, so with that being said, I want to pull from this paper by Sherry Hamby, on defining violence and why it matters. This is from the Journal of Psychology of Violence from April 2017. So 17, and this is the University of the South, and and just pull from the abstract there. And she talks about that a comprehensive definition of violence involves 4 essential elements. Number 1, any behavior or any I would add to that, because we are systems minded, we are structurally minded and oriented, right? So any system, any structure, any law, policy, process, practice, a rule or regulation, norm or culture, behavior, action, right? That has 4 elements. 1 is intentional. 2, unwanted. 3, non-essential. And 4, and this is the key piece, harmful. And what I want to add to that is the harm can be visible or invisible. It can be seen or not seen. The consequence can be immediate or later, but nonetheless, harm is experienced. So what are examples of visible harm? The police come at you and beat you, right? You have the scars. They sit on you, they choke you. Now you're in the hospital, you have airway injury. All of those things, they're physical, visible scars and injury and negative impact to the health that you are experiencing or can be seen by yourself and others. There's physical harm from that police brutality. Your child witnesses you being beat up by the police. Never experienced any hit, didn't come to them physically or anything, but the trauma of visualizing that. Or your video gets put on the socials and the rest of us watch this. And we talked about vicarious or secondary, tertiary trauma earlier. We are also collectively traumatized. There's nothing physical on us in terms of the negative impact of exposure to your unjust experience. But our telomeres have been shortened, right? Because that is one video or one experience of, unfortunately, very many that we have experienced, again, through vicariously, through the videos we've seen, or members of our own families and communities. And again, you talked about the intergenerational piece from those that have come before us, right? And we may not necessarily be able to point and say, look, I have this scar. Look, it gave me a cut here. My bone was broken necessarily. But the mental stress and the rise in cortisol that then leads to high blood pressure, diabetes, autoimmune illness, weight gain, arthritis, and other inflammatory conditions, depression, anxiety, trauma, stress disorder, all these consequences is harm. So when we talk about violence, we do have to talk about, as Brother Benny said, all forms of it. So when you say that violence is never the answer, you are right. But honey, why is it that you are picking and choosing what kind of violence is the answer and what kind is not? Right? Why are we selective in what violence we need to be very aggressive around? This really came up for me strong with the whole Chris Rock and Will Smith thing. Violence is not the answer. Violence is not the answer. Well, the man experienced some. By the way, I'm on nobody's side. I'm always on the black side. I don't take sides on. This Alabama bro. I'm clearly right. Again, if there's a black side, that's the side I'm on. And when it's us in our community, I'm still on the black side. Whatever that means in context. But that's neither here nor there. Point is, we have to not be selective of what violence is. And what you're saying is that structural piece. Anything that creates an environment where people are deprived of the opportunity to live their best lives and thrive is violent. And so when we have, structures and systems that are set up to impoverish people, to deprive them from economic opportunity, to deprive them from healthy experiences where they can experience health care, public health care, delivery, etc., and all forms of health care in a way that their human dignity is optimized and they're respected and they're valued and loved and blessed and cared for. All those pieces are violence. And we have to have that same energy of there's no excuse for violence. With that, we have to see these as one and the same. So this is one part of the whole there is no excuse for violence, that the critique to that very nonsensical like my argument there. The other part of that is, what do we label as violence depending on the body that is perpetuating that behavior? So when Black folks are standing up for ourselves in response to very clear violent measures that have been leveled against us, now all of a sudden people are catching feelings as to what kind of behaviors are okay and not okay. Forever, the ways in which we have rebelled and the ways in which we have resisted have been policed by white people. We have always, even within the abolitionist movement, even within the anti-slavery movement that was mixed race, white folks, even within those movements, and even today, we got white liberals, okay, aka Jennifer Aniston and her people. Okay, anyway, I'm done with that, right? That still, I like, this is how to show up as a Black person fighting for your life, for your dignity, for your liberation. There is always a policing around the ways in which we show up for ourselves. And if it's anything that compromises the comfort, well-being, and sort of, again, protection of whiteness, it is frowned upon and labeled with the words that are engineered intentionally to acquire a certain response that ultimately hurts and harms us. So it's so interesting how Black resistance is pathologized as violence, but white assault, white terrorism on a daily basis, whether on the interpersonal level or structurally in the ways white folks vote, in the ways white folks spend their money, in the ways white folks make decisions about where they live, where they send their children to school or not, where they work or not, who is hired or isn't, in the ways opportunities are gate kept and resources are gate kept, that ultimately is not labeled as violence, which it is. And so these are some, and I hopefully y'all are catching that these are some of the lessons as we talk about the celebrations, but also the lessons derived from this glorious event, and how it starts to translate, how we translate it upwards, upstream, as well as downstream in the ways we individually show up in our collective spaces. And we'll talk about that in a second. But how we also show up individually as Black folks and as white co-liberators, how that can be applied. But we really do have to have that conversation around what constitutes violence, what is violence, and how we have conversation around how we are, quote unquote, non-violent, of what that even means within the context of what we speak on. Because ultimately it comes down to what preserves white comfort. Brother Benny, do you have any thoughts there? And again, I want to welcome, before Brother Benny comes in, Dr. Leonard. I see you. Thank you for coming in. Here am I and others. Welcome to the space. Oh, I see that True Words Are Spoken are also requesting to speak. So we'll be bringing you up in a bit. So thank you for joining. Again, y'all are welcome to request to speak. And True Words, I'll be calling on you in a bit. Thanks for being here. But Brother Benny, any thoughts or responses to that?
So on my end, I think the biggest thing that you said at the very end is white comfort, right? And that's what it all boils down to. I don't know if you remember. There's a video where um, white student beating a Muslim girl up or something like that, and the teacher, white teacher, didn't say anything. And then a black girl stood up, started standing up for um, that Muslim girl, and started just knocking the mess out of this white girl. Then you heard the teacher yell, "Hey, what are you doing? Stop it!" All of a sudden, she had a vested interest in the safety of the students, right? And that's what I always see. There we coddle certain groups of people, and other groups of people we think they're just deserving of no support, no care, and they thought that it can happen again, right? Like I almost thought at the beginning of if I watched just maybe the 30-40 seconds, I was like, man, what's going on, right? But there's a reckoning coming, right? There's a reckoning coming, and we're not gonna just stand by and watch. Um, so for me, it's yeah, really looking at how many generations are invested in the coddling of and the protection of whiteness, right? Whiteness is not even a thing. That was like a thing that came up in 1920s, or right? So it's like, all I see is whether it's intentional or not, and it is intentional because that was the definition of violence that was given. We have an understanding that only certain groups of people deserve safety, and that is what the police, right? Like, protect and serve who? Property and whiteness, right? And so these are all themes that for me are just matching up with my expectations of white supremacy and how white supremacy upholds and protects itself and the people who uphold these ideologies. And man, I can I'm about to watch that video again just to see that swing, because so deserving, right? Like, justice was so tangible at that moment. So that's kind of where my mind goes. I'll let True take it from here.
I hear you. So before we bring True in, thank you, True, for being here. I appreciate you, and you definitely introduced yourself. But I just really wanna. You reminded me of something really important to note. And yes, when that brother jumped into the water to swim, Aquaman, when Aquaman jumped into that water to swim to kick out, I don't know if y'all knew when he was fully clothed. I swim. And by the way, first of all, let's talk about myth busting. So, black folks swim. All right. We want to make y'all think we don't swim so that when we got to swim to kick ass, or for when, y'all will be surprised. We have the element of surprise on about a lot of black people swim. Like, we put that myth out there. It's part of protection, but I guess I've just busted that myth. So clearly black people can swim, and we can swim fully clothed. I swim. It is hard to swim fully clothed. That brother swam fully clothed, jumped out, his shorts fell down, as should be so, because heavy from the water. He didn't even care that his butt was out and his, pee was out, and he was out. He was like, oh, they can catch all the body parts. Okay, he was there for all the smoke. So there is that. And what I really want to, the myth number 2, I would like to bust, a myth number, whatever number we're on. I think that, Brother Benny, and I want to put this out there, there is a myth about this crab in the basket mentality, and that, black folks, like, we don't always like stand together. And wow, this is such an incredible show of unity, and black folks, if only we support each other like this. I really want to disrupt that narrative. I believe that black people, this was the unity and unification coming together, caught on camera and put on the socials. We are some of all, and I mix in all categories and groups of people, baby. The same level of like disagreement and whatever, and in some groups even worse. They have it. You hear people on social media, like when you talk about the Asians, when you talk about this, they're always together. That's not true. That's a lie. They are not more unified than Black folks. Black folks as unified as a group of humans can be, who are very diverse and heterogeneous. In fact, being of a group that is incredibly diverse. We are some of the most diverse groups of humans. It is amazing the degree of unity we do have. Okay, period. So I would start with that, and that Black folks are always supporting each other, and we are. But there's a myth again. It goes back to the things we've been learned that we are not our ancestor people and what they were taught. That no, y'all don't support, and then we pass it to each other, and it's not true. I looked at that at the Alabama brawl, the way all of us came together to support that brother, that uncle, as typical, because for me that is normal. Yes, do we have examples where we don't stand up? Yes, but it's not less than any other group. And it's definitely not less than any human should be expected to do. In fact, we exceed the average, quote, human social groups like communality levels. This is number one. And then number two, related to that, is also this myth of crab in the basket. And what I say is that the problem isn't that the crabs in the basket are pulling each other down. The problem is that they're in a basket. Is that where they belong? Have you seen crabs in the ocean pull each other down? No, because they are where they belong. They're in their natural habitat. The issue isn't crabs. The crabs are doing what you should expect living things to do when put in an artificial environment and forced and subjected to violence, the threat of being eaten, or whatever it is, the reason they're in the basket. We act as if that should be normal. No, when the crabs are in the ocean, they are just doing their thing. They're not pulling. The issue isn't crabs pulling each other down. The issue is why are they in the basket? The issue is the basket. So that's where the focus really should be. And it goes back to what you're saying, Brother Benny, around what is the violence here? Is it the crab on crab violence? Or is it the violence of being taken from where you belong in the ocean and put in a basket against your will? Clearly, the violence is the basket. So I really think that as we begin to move and shift our paradigm of thought and the ways in which we critically, again, goes back to my intro for those who have been here from beginning, what are the frameworks and the guidance in terms of the critical engagement that we have with these current events and with the media and with the news and narratives that involve us? Are we critical consumers that are grounded in history and fact and true story of our realities, right? And our experiences from a historical and socio-political context standpoint? Or do we just take what is given to us on a superficial level and not really understand that it has implications to our everyday lives and day to day, but also on a systemic level as it applies to our community and the entire country and frankly world at large? So I really appreciate that gift. True, the mic is up to you. Go ahead and break it down. True is an educator, K-12 and college level, and they support all those who want to be educated. He's political. They are politically astute, a world traveler, movie lover, hiker, married, and an atheist. And so, welcome to the floor, the Anti-Racism in Action Roundtable. Please break it down for us. What you got where it comes to the Alabama bull brawl?
Well, first of all, I just wanted to share with you because I've been in space with you. This summer harvest is almost over. All the tomatoes I pulled up and everything. So, I'm tired. I pulled up the harvest, snap peas, green beans. It's been amazing.
Aww.
But when we talk about this incident, I think one of the salient points that automatically comes to mind is I think that white Americans have been so accustomed to passive microaggressions as well as institutional, financial, medical aggressions toward Black Americans. And when we outwardly see a physical aggression toward an individual that's starting to escalate and escalate and escalate, and argument is argument, but for the white man to literally put hands on him first, that is a line. That is a line. And then I think that people tend to, want to have this thing. And I'm always conflicted where this is where now you've crossed the line.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you cross the line as an individual. I don't care what color, what race you are.
Mm-hmm.
Once you put your hands on someone, now you're in it. You are literally in it. And we have this conjecture around because we do have white Americans, Asian Americans. We have a lot of groups of people who have been constantly berated, and not berated, I apologize, barraged with the image or the understanding of what Black people are, who Black people are, oh, they're violent, and so on. So this idea is very counterintuitive because, again, when a crime happens, for example, I was in the space earlier and I said it, when a crime happens, or if a Jewish individual says, hey, this is anti-Semitic, there are no questions.
Mm-hmm.
There are literally no questions. I mean, absolutely. Look at the hurdles and hoops that Jamie Foxx was going for a tweet. That he was assuaging the Jewish community, that his comments were not anti-Semitic. This is, instant. But a greater culture does not respect that. A greater culture doesn't respect that we are victims or can be victims. You hear from Sandra Bland to George Floyd to Khalil Castro, there's always this very steep, and we even do it as Black Americans.
That's right.
The whataboutism.
Right.
Why did Sandra Bland this, and what could have happened? Or, George Floyd. There's always an investment in, I'm sure it didn't go the way they said. So it gives credence to the fact that we are forgers of our truth. Because no other group, you do not see Asians being questioned, when Asian hate crime. They said it and it was accepted. Period. So there are groups of people. I see this with, from people that are within the LGBT community. When they say they're victims of violence, they are believed. Okay, they are believed. As a member of that community, they are believed. I am more likely to be believed as a gay man, as a gay Black man, than as a Black gay man. If I believe my gayness, then I'm less likely to be believed. Because we do not. People ostensibly believe there is an other factor when dealing with Black people.
Right.
When we look at Black children being missing, the wait time, she was in this neighborhood, or, you've seen her. We have an entire narrative of whataboutisms when it relates to Blackness, violence, institutional issues. And the reason why that is because it prolongs, it keeps the status quo.
Right, of course.
It keeps the status quo. Because if you were to truly investigate, look how quickly and swiftly people definitely come to the defense of any anti-Semitism, policies, procedures. People in the LGBT community, Asian people, there is no whataboutism. And it shouldn't be. I'm not saying there should be. I'm saying that should be afforded to Black Americans.
Right.
We are the first, with the exception of indigenous people, and there are another ones who suffer when their women come up missing.
Right.
Or their people. Because we are literally ground zero of hate.
Right.
We, not the LGBTQ community, because I lean in. Will the LGBT community make Shay, I cannot pronounce his last name, I apologize, Shay Shibley, the gentleman who was killed by reportedly a Muslim, will they make him a face just as virulent as Matthew Shepard? Will they? Will the white transgender community make all those Black women as prominent? No, because they hold that power of who is the victim. We are. We have invalidate our women. Medical apartheid kills our women and our children. Will we be the face of the women's, I don't like to say abortion movement, but I like to say, will we be the face of the women's abortion movement because that's due to medical apartheid and others?
Mm-hmm.
Will Black transgender individuals be the face of that movement because when we are that face, we break down because we go in and say policies, procedures. Will we be that face? Will Black Americans be the face of HIV and AIDS because gay or straight, because it is affecting us? When they other us and make us not the face of hate, the face of disproportionality, medical and others, it allows them to believe that, that they are on the right course. And our invisibility is a thing that is ingrained because they will not respectfully share. We should be the face of of these issues.
Yeah.
And I've never understood how we are not the face, how Black women are not the face of things in regards to, abortions or medical health in that regard, reproductive health.
But True, you said it though. You said exactly why we are not the face of any of these things, right? Because it is to maintain the status quo of white supremacism and anti-Blackness, which is the foundation of the country. You said it right. You went to the core of the matter and what it is. And I appreciate you, True. Thank you so much. We're going to go to Dr. Leonard, and then we have a question from YouTube in a minute. But thank you. That analysis is spot on. That is the point. The normalization. That's what Brother Benny was saying with that video. And thank you for reminding me about that. I forgot about that. But that video about the young girl that was being bullied and hurt and violated by the white female classmate until the Black girl came in and defended that girl. And now the teacher found her voice, because there is a normalization. We have all been, and when you said also Black folks, absolutely, we fall prey to the same conditioning and socialization of white supremacism, right? And anti-Blackness. So we also are perpetuated. There's a normalization and acceptance of violence perpetrated against Black bodies. That is normalized. What is pathologized is when it's the other way around. But that is normalized because we are the bodies, we are the figure, right, of subjugation, of subservience, and of the recipient of violence, and the recipient of oppression, and the recipient of repression. Like that is the narrative, that is the scripting. That is the scripting to the movie of America since the 1600s, right? Even until today. It is the codification of our dehumanization. It is the creation of gospel, that what is gospel truth is that we are not human. So of course we can deal with pain more than everybody else, and we're not believed when we say we have pain or treat it appropriately. Of course, when we say we have chest pain, don't think a heart attack, think of histrionics and the person is being dramatic, or the person is a drug addict or whatever. Of course, when the woman is saying I have back pain, don't think that the woman is in labor, again, if she's in a Black body, and the list goes on. These are all the violences that are normalized in society. This is the connection here, right? So when we say like health is interwoven, if life is involved, then you are talking about health and well-being, right? And it's all, so you brought that whole medical appetite. What is medical appetite? That different, segregated medical care, medical and healthcare and public health experiences along racial lines by design. By design. And that design is codified inside of this idea of Black dehumanization, that we are just not human like everybody else, and therefore of less value. So when someone is kicking our ass in the street, when someone is suffocating us in the subway, when we are dancing and we are voguing at the Brooklyn gas station. So that was Brother O'Shea Sibley, right? That we get to be killed, we get to be insulted, we get to be harmed. That's normal. That's normal. Don't speak up, second guess, ask questions, gaslight, doubt, need to see the whole video, so on and so forth. Well, what did they do? What were they wearing? And so on and so forth. Because we've all been conditioned to normalize violence against us. But don't you dare raise your hand in resistance. Because now there is no excuse for violence. So yes, it is truly to perpetuate and maintain the system of white supremacism and anti-black, and this refrain needs to be sung over and over and over again if we are to dismantle said systems. Doc, the floor is yours, the mic is yours, and then we'll go to Laura Mundo's question in YouTube. What do you have to share with us on today? The Alabama Brawl. In fact, let me lead with this question. What was your favorite Black Twitter meme? Let's start with that.
Oh my gosh. First, good evening.
Good evening.
My favorite meme has to be the one of the young fella who was recreated the Malcolm X picture.
Oh my God.
With him standing in the window with a I think it was an M16 or something similar. But they imposed the folding chair.
The folding chair. I'm gonna put that up in the chat for the room, for the space, so y'all can see what the brother is referring to. But yeah, that was a good one. That was a very good one. Yes.
That took me out. But this has been a really powerful conversation, from your opening where you define violence to what's his name there,
Brother Benny. You talking about Brother Benny?
Yes, Brother Benny.
Mm-hmm.
Reminding us of the double standards and how Black bodies are policed even in our schools, and then of course truths always bringing fire as well. So I just wanted to add real quick that this whole scenario, and staying true to your title with celebrations and lessons, I'm always focused on the lessons, being an educator myself.
Right.
I am from Alabama. My crew,
all right,
spaces with, they know that I'm proud of and always have been. I'm from the Black Belt, raised in Mobile. My first position as a assistant professor was there at Troy University at the Montgomery campus.
All right.
So I know that downtown area very well. The campus is on about 2 blocks from those docks. And yes, so as I even contemplate the events that unfolded, I cannot, view them from outside of a historical context. Those very docks were used, in the 18th, 19th century, 17th, 18th centuries. That's where chattel slaves were brought to and sold, quote unquote, down the river, right there at those docks.
That's right. We were just talking about it at the top of the hour. That is absolutely right. And warehouses and depots had to be built. The volume was so incredible that warehouses had to be built to house all the bodies that had to come through there and then march down Commerce Street to Court Square Market to be sold. Right.
Where now the Legacy Museum, which is owned and operated by Equal Justice Initiative, is right in the midst of that, very much so. So I say that just to set the context for me, because the things that I saw were not things that were new for me. You have to understand, the cradle of the civil rights movement is right there in Alabama. We're talking about people who were influenced by Dr. King and who trusted in his message and his methods. It took, we have to understand, it took a lot of courage. It took a lot of emotional intelligence for those folks to move this country one step further towards democracy,
right,
without violence, in a non-violent way. And that's the stock of people who who are in my home state, in Montgomery, all across the South, and even all across the United States, within the Black community, so to speak. And so, for me, the lessons learned were that, you know, we are resilient, and we always have been.
That's right.
That we can change our methods when we need to change
That's right.
our methods.
That's right.
And so there was a scene from The Brawl that really stood out. The gentleman with the chair, of course. That could have been my uncle. Could have been anyone in my family that I saw there. And what I saw in physical actions was a manifestation of trauma coming out through the swinging of that chair. So you know what I mean? He was swinging from all the hurt that he had actually endured as a Black man from this area. And he is from that area. I've still got friends and family there in Montgomery, and they've been filling me in on the folks who were involved. And so he is from that area, right? And if you're from that area, like you said, you have endured all manner of violence throughout generations. And we know that once violence, as you've already highlighted, violence it does not manifest just physically, but it manifests, it transcends physicality, and it can manifest psychologically, emotionally, and also physiologically as a result of those psychological and emotional manifestations.
That's right.
As well. And it can be passed from generation to generation.
Yes.
I'm speaking to you today as someone who has endured aspects of trauma based on the experiences of my parents and grandparents. And I had the blessing and the honor of knowing my great-grandparents as well. So for me, it's that story of resilience, and it's that the lesson that Black folks are still, wrestling with that trauma.
That's right.
And it is race-based traumatic stress as well. And
That's
those
right.
things manifest in a lot of different ways. And you alluded to, you know, the crab in the barrel and the artificial environments. Oh my gosh, that's a whole nother space you can really get down on. But I just wanted to highlight that to say that that's where I'm coming from tonight.
Yes.
You know, for me, even the memes, and I have been chuckling all day long
Yes.
with the memes.
Yes.
But we have to understand that creativity is born from trauma.
That's
well.
right.
People
That's
are
right.
coping
That's right.
through humor and laughter.
That's right.
How we cope, right?
That's right.
And so I think we need to bring that to the forefront so that we can continue to cope in healthier ways, so that they do not continue to manifest in those unhealthy ways.
That's right.
Blood pressure, diabetes,
That's
all those
right.
things that you're
That's
very
right.
familiar with, I'm sure,
Yeah.
in your practice. But I just wanted to share that piece, and thank you again for raising the topic.
No, brother, thank you for everything, your service, your living, your work, everything, and all that you shared now in this moment, and all that you share all the time as an educator and as a community member and leader, and just in all aspects of your life. So thank you for that. Thank you, Brother Trust. Well, I wanna seize upon, as we are sort of rounding up our conversation tonight, and again shouting out and inviting everyone. I see you, Sister Phyllis, for coming in the room, and everybody else in the space. Thank you for making the time and being here and sharing space. Sister Katia, you are welcome. Feel free to request to speak and to share space. We are just sharing space with each other, and folks in YouTube as well. Thank you for making the time and being here. Laura, we're going to get to your question in a bit, but I want to reflect on two very powerful points that you raised for us, Doc, in terms of we talked about the historical role of Montgomery, Alabama, as it relates to the slave and that specific spot that you refer, those docks and the slave auction blocks. But you also reminded us that the state of Alabama and also the city of Montgomery is also very critical when it comes to the civil rights movement, when it comes to the other form of resistance, right? The other form of resistance. We talked about how those enslaved ancestors also resisted. You had people that fought physically and with what they could. You had people that, again, that their very survival, oh Lord, the very survival of those ancestors are themselves resistance and rebellion. We're not supposed to be here. I keep reminding people this 13, 14% of the population they say that we are is itself incredible resistance and rebellion. Our life, I always remind folks, I said, look, you Black and you still drawing breath, you're walking around up and down, you're waking up in the morning, you've done enough in terms of resistance and contribution to the cause, because we're not even supposed to be here. So our life itself, survival, and then some of us have the nerve to thrive in spite of, that is resistance. And so it is so important that we note that. And so Montgomery, Alabama, Alabama has played a huge role when it comes to voting rights, right? When it comes to the Montgomery bus boycotts, and so on and so forth. And of course, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and all forms of the civil rights movement. This is a very significant, powerful place. We talk about the role of space and place in our liberation work and process. So this is so incredibly meaningful. So this is one point. The second point about trauma. Now, we discussed this earlier on the vicarious trauma and secondary trauma, but absolutely the ways in which we are coping inside of trauma when we stand up and resist in whatever forms. And the brother just broke down that a key lesson is that all forms are okay. And I want to build upon that yes, the work of liberation, the work of resistance, the work of revolution, that it takes all forms. We can nice talk in Congress, we can vote, we can know how we spend our money, and sometimes we got to give the smoke. It's part of a toolkit of resistance, right? It's access to entire toolkit. So yes, we are resilient people. This is historical, this is ancestral, right? We are survivors of trauma, and we have very many ways in which we survive and thrive and are resilient through it all. But we also have to understand that it is okay to diversify our portfolio of resistance. That, we don't have to be afraid to throw hands, and we can trust that our community will back us up. I think this is something that academics can learn. This is something that people in the elite spaces can learn. This is something that we can learn from our brothers and sisters that did not sit down and calculate the risk-benefit ratio and they what is the possibility of this, that, and the third, but they came out and did their thing because it was the right thing to do. It was almost this ancestral call, and they responded viscerally because it was the right thing to do. You don't just come, like True said, and put hands on somebody and have the nerve to expect nothing will happen to you. Oh, not today. And the rest of us can get some healing through that. But I appreciate you, Doc, for really reminding us about, even as I have been chuckling, I have gotten absolutely nothing done today. So I said, okay, if I can get one thing done today, I'm going to hold a space. I have got no work, and I have all the deadlines on my ass. And I said, if I don't get anything done today, let me just go ahead and hold a space. And so I'm with you. I have been on all these memes. They have been on my timeline. Folks have been texting me them. It is hilarious. But really, the deeper part of it is, to your point, these are still trauma responses. These are still trauma responses, and we are survivors of trauma. We are living with the consequences of trauma in our health, in our relationships, in and so many other ways. But thank you, God, for the gift of humor. Thank you, universe, nature, creator, for the gift of humor. And just this unique, just Black way of navigating the world in in this beautiful way that ultimately is a mitigation practice. And so that's another lesson I would say that, again, this is why I don't play with joy. Joy is critical to me in my arsenal of resistance. I have to laugh, and I try to help others to laugh as well, but I have to laugh. Laughter, dance, music, it is critical. And of course, rest, but play is critical to preserving these telomeres so I can live a long, fulfilling life. This is a lesson from my ancestors. And frankly, this is a lesson from the weekend and the ways in which Black social media, I don't know what we call ourselves now. Are we still Black Twitter now that Twitter is not Twitter? I don't know. That's another space. But the fact that, okay, that Black folks just came together in just showing the incredible ingenuity and creativity, things that you know technology can do that you could do with video and Photoshop. Black folks have discovered it and put it out there, and I just can't with us. So I just love us. But that collectivity, collective action, taking action, humor, and remembering Nathaniel Washington, who invented, I mean, the irony upon irony. When you said, I think, Brother Ben, you said the ancestor showed up. Nathaniel Washington invented the folding chair. Evidently, there's a patent under his name. Now, the picture that has been circulating is not him. That is another ancestor. That is, I believe, Latimer, the founder of the bulb filament that allowed, folks like Edison created the electric bulb. Edison created the electric bulb, but the electric bulb will not work for hours and days without the filament, which the Black man, the uncle, Latimer Lassiter, invented. So now that's his picture running around. That's fine. That's two Black inventors. If you didn't know, now you know. Okay. But when you say that the ancestors showed up at the docks, it was literal. Okay. With that full goddamn white folding chair, which I'm sure is now $350 at Walmart based on this weekend. But with that being said, I just want to appreciate the offering that has been given. Now we're going to start rounding up and talking about, Brother Benny, how we translate as you were beginning to direct us. And so as we look towards the overall work of Black liberation, the overall Black work of, of anti-racism and anti-oppression, what are the lessons and that we can derive from, and just sort of bring them together, this experience over the weekend. And we've already started talking about many of them, but just to make it concrete for folks that we can derive from this place to inform and fuel our work in the space of anti-racism, in the space of our liberation, in the space of abolition, etc. But before we do that, Dr. Laura Mundo has a question in YouTube, and they ask, is there hope for emotional safety in a post-colonial world? How does capitalism prevent this? So in other words, what is the role of capitalism inside of this weekend and all the issues that are connected to it? And also, given all that is happening, where is safety? And you talked about safety, Brother Benny, and who is allowed to be safe and who is allowed not to be safe. And we talked about physical safety, but I really appreciate this bringing up this idea of emotional safety, and therefore who is worthy of it and who isn't. And then, of course, the role of money and profit that is informed, because there always is, something swimming around where it has to do with capitalism. When, and we know that race and racism and capitalism are pretty much like sides of the same coin, right? And we learned that from, I believe it was Charles, let me not misquote. So, but from the book Racial Capitalism. All right, that brother, I'll find it in a second, who wrote that book a while ago. So, Brother Benny, Doc, do you have any insight around this question about where does emotional safety fit into this conversation, and what role capitalism plays inside of all of it? So Brother Benny or Doc is open to either of you.
All right, I'll take a stab at it. So is there hope for emotional safety in a post-colonial world? I believe there is hope for emotional safety, but this is not something that is going to be given to us, right? This is something that we have to create for ourselves. A lot of people like the word safe spaces, right? Safe spaces don't exist. We have to intentionally create them, right? And we as individuals ourselves can be a safe space for others, right? So it's something that we create within ourselves and for others intentionally, as opposed to something that exists inherently for us. Because as we know, this world wasn't made for us, and they make it clear each time, And so is there hope for emotional safety? Yes, but that hope comes from the relationships that you have, right? That hope comes from the village that you create and cultivate and nurture. So I want to, hang on to hope. But this other piece, how does capitalism prevent this? I think the biggest way that capitalism prevents emotional safety is, and liberation, is the fact that oftentimes, even Black people, right? Sometimes I wonder if we're searching for liberation, if we're trying to get to a price point where some of these issues and systems don't affect us as much, right? And so, how does capitalism prevent this? Capitalism makes us feel as if we reach a certain amount of dollar, that some of these harmful systems won't affect us. And what that does is it prevents us from being somebody who's taking down, these systems. We become complacent and we become complicit in order to, buy into and get the benefits of capitalism. And so what capitalism does is create this individualism, right? Where we don't need anybody anymore. I can do it myself. I just need to work hard. I just need to make enough money. But that individualism does not allow for emotional safety. Because again, emotional safety comes from community. It comes from, people cultivating that space for you. And so, my thing is always, you have to, capitalism is always going to exist, right? But you have to push against the indoctrination of capitalism and white supremacy. Your value is not on the basis of your, how much money you make. Your value is not on the basis of, you're upholding white supremacy or the standards of white supremacy, right? And so as long as we realize that, I think there is still room for hope, and there's still, opportunities for liberation, and we got to continue, resisting these systems. But, I also want to kind of go back to what some other people said today. True, you said something that really hit me around, Black girls getting kidnapped, and Black girls. There's many things: the detention, the suspensions in schools, so many different things that happen disproportionately. But one of the other pieces is when you look at human trafficking incidences, right? One of the things that people say of why they chose a Black girl or a Black woman over a white girl or a white woman is they literally will tell you, well, I'm going to get less time, less jail time if it's a Black girl or if it's a Black woman than I will, right? And so that tells us that even the laws are codifying that we're not valuable. And so when we see, the different people who went to jail after this incident, my question goes to who's going to have an easier time, during sentencing, the people who are the aggressors or the people who are defending themselves? Because, we are the public sentiment and we're like, okay, this went well for Black people. We defended ourselves. But when it comes to the court, right, what are the courts going to see? And how are they going to impose these, punishments on people? And will the punishments be proportionate? And will it be, would it be equitable? That's something that I'm already questioning. And another piece that I also was thinking about in terms of when you brought up the crabs in the basket mentality, Dr. Ijeoma, was just how, you said it best. You were like, it's not the fact that, they're crabs in the basket. It's the basket. They don't belong in the basket, right? And so white supremacy creates these conditions, right, that makes us act in a way where we're, crabs in a basket. But people point out and they identify, oh, look how they're acting, instead of looking at the, systems and the structures and the environment that led to us behaving the way they are. And that gaslighting is oftentimes the gaslighting that I see within mental health. Right, where we are creating so much oppression, so much trauma, and then you're surprised, and then you're, labeling people as crazy or, something's wrong with them. But as you're, causing the conditions that are causing their suffering, right? So we have to ask ourselves, who are these labels benefiting, right? And how do we go about healing in a way that's not tied to the labels that, people who are already hurting us are creating for us? And so those are some of the things. But in terms of the emotional safety, I think there's still hope for that. We just have to cultivate that ourselves within our own communities.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I really do. Doc, do you have anything to add to that?
I have very little to add to that.
Mm-hmm.
He was literally all of the points that I was thinking about. He checked them off as he was talking.
Mm-hmm.
With regards to emotional safety, right? I understand that even working in, higher education, that space is not necessarily safe for me, right? And so what I have done is I have maintained, not created, but maintained the spaces that are safe for me. And all of those spaces include my blood relatives and my play relatives as well. And I make sure that I seek refuge in those spaces because of those everyday navigations that I have to make out here in the world where I'm not always safe physically, psychologically, emotionally, right? And I understand that. And so for me, I think he's absolutely right. We have to create more of that, or maintain the ones that are currently, that we currently have, but also teach those who don't have it how to create it as well. And I as he was talking about capitalism and how it can be an inhibitor, I'll use this example. Who have we not heard from today on Twitter or social media, right? There are some quote-unquote Black voices who make the bag by not engaging in this type of joy that we have experienced. Not joy in violence, but in this type of coping that we have engaged in throughout the day today. And those people have been conspicuously quiet all day long on the whole topic of the Bama Brawl. And it's because they're protecting their bag. That's capitalism. And those individuals can inhibit, and they do inhibit, even though they've always been around. So I think it's good to talk about these things, from a conceptual lens, but also to give some real world examples. And I've got a couple of names I can rattle off real quick, but I won't go there, who have been conspicuously quiet on this whole topic. So again, I think Brother Benny nailed it. Yeah, thank you.
No, you're welcome. And I want to appreciate that, Brother Benny. You definitely nailed that. And because we are an educational space, so Dr. Opara always going to drop a definition or two on your butt so that you are leaving out of here with real value. If you didn't know, and now you know. So when we talk about emotional and psychological safety, what are we talking about? And so a definition is as thus. And so this is from Dr. Vincent et al. From the Journal of Experiential Education, and the article Emotional Safety in Adventure Therapy Programs. But emotional safety can be defined as a perceived freedom from psychological harm. All right, okay, a perceived freedom from psychological harm that can be measured on a continuum from feeling threatened to feeling safe. All right. And an individual's position on that continuum at any given moment is dependent on the amount of trust they have in themselves and in the group members. So again, it's a perceived sense of freedom from any psychological harm, that somehow there will be suffering and some kind of retaliation or negative consequence by them being who they are in any given space. Right. And it's something that can be measured from I'm threatened, so let me be on guard and lock down and not do much and not incur this negative consequence, right? To feeling safe, where I can be who I am and speak how I speak and and all is well. I'll be celebrated, not just sort of like tolerated, but actually celebrated, right? And it is connected to the degree of trust that you have in yourself and in the group members of the space that you're occupying. Okay. It is a willingness to reveal how one really feels, how one really is, and a security inside of that. All right. There's another definition that describes a space. So that is one definition, as in I feel emotionally safe or not, right? on the individual level. So that definition, the definition that we just went through, applies. But what about a space? What does an emotionally safe space mean? And so this is from Children First and by Lauren B. et al., meaning and others, places of emotional safety, creating classrooms where I can. Children First, okay? And that's described as a space where I can be myself and express my feelings and share my circumstances without fear, and connect with a person and a group who value and respect me. So any space that constitutes emotional safety, that we say, oh, that is an emotionally safe space, is a space where you feel that you can be all of who you are. You can bring all your you-ness, what I call your you-ness, and express yourself, your feelings, thoughts, ideas, right? Without fear of whatever, of retaliation, of being judged, or being criticized, of harm, etc. But also that you can connect. And so this goes to what Brother Benny was talking about, and of course, what Doc was talking about as well, that there is also this area for connection with other people or with the group, because they value and respect me. And sort of what is implied in there is trust. And so therefore, it goes to belie what we've heard from Brother Benny and from Doc as well around this piece of community and relationships. If we are to be emotionally safe, then we find that inside of community that sees us, values us, respects us, celebrates us as we are, in which we feel safe, able, secure, trusting to bring our full selves and be all that we are. And we get to cultivate that. We get to cultivate that. We get to cultivate that. You get to cultivate that. I get to cultivate that. We get to cultivate that together. So you get to define that for you and build that, because your people are out there. Your tribe are out there and in here. Sometimes they're right under your nose, but for some reason you don't see it because they're right under your nose. But the point being that your tribe is there, and you don't need 50 people or 500 unless you do. But the 1, 2, 3 people of genuine, authentic relationships that form this village for you, in which you can bring your full self without fear of reprisal, in which you can trust yourself and them and others as they see, value, respect, and celebrate you. Yeah, that's worth it. And it goes back to what Doc was saying about the trauma mitigation strategies. That's part of it. That is part of it. That is a huge part of it, right? As we mitigate and survive this trauma. So thank you for that question. That was an outstanding question. And of course, how capitalism is, again, agents of white supremacism. That's how it was designed in this country, okay? And so being able to see the ways in which the antidote to what we just talked about, which is, again, community and collective action, which is a theme that has ridden throughout this conversation, and the lessons and celebrations of the Bama Brawl. I love that. That is a perfect, of course, it's only someone from Bama, the Alabama, that would give us the right, because I was like the Montgomery Boat Brawl, the Alabama Boat Brawl, the Alabama Brawl. There's so many words. But listen, I just love, again, our lingual genius to always just use language in the most delicious ways to convey the most just complex and yet simple ideas and concepts and realities and experiences in just the most beautifully linguistic way. And so the Bama Brawl has won for me. That's what I'll be calling it from now on. Thank you, Doc, for that gift. And so the lessons and celebration from the Bama Brawl on today, right, is, again, we get that thread of collective action and relationship. So of course, the antidote to that is individualism. It's protecting the bag, which causes you to separate yourself from the collective, to somehow believe this myth that you're okay by yourself. Nobody ever is, really, right? And so that somehow, it's you and only you, and it's not, can't be. There's no joy in that. There's no happiness in that. There's no, fullness and fulfillment, and not, and all the protection from the stressors and the adverse effects of the chronic toxic stress of surviving white supremacism and anti-blackness. Like, so there is no protection from those consequences. So yes, the way in which capitalism, then the mechanism by which it prevents or dismantles that is to perpetuate the myth of individualism, which is this neoliberal concept, mythological concept that, yeah, you by yourself, you yourself and I, and pull yourself by bootstraps, and all these like impossible and very untrue things, but like, again, somehow convincing and socializing and conditioning folks to believe it as fact and as gospel, when it has never proven to be the case or the truth or actually work, but somehow we have brought into it, which again goes against this mantra of collectivism and communality and community that is actually what is truly our wealth, right? That is the ways in which it then, of course, compromises our emotional safety, psychological safety, and frankly, physical safety as well, all forms of safety. And so I think that was beautifully described. And I just want to appreciate my two brothers for helping to really unpack the response there. And so as we are wrapping up, we want to end on and translate this in a specific way around what are those lessons from the Bama Brawl to inform and power our anti-racism work, our liberation work, our abolition work, from the individual to the communal to the structural and systemic. Can we translate certain pieces here meaningfully, powerfully, effectively? Can we use some of these lessons to power our work to achieve the outcomes that we are collectively working on? And so I'll start with Doc, and then we'll end with Brother Benny, and then we'll wrap up. But again, we are also opening this is the last call for alcohol. So anybody who does want to speak, this is your last opportunity to request, and we can go from there. But Doc, do you have anything that you want to add just in terms of what are concrete? And of course, we've been singing it like a melody throughout this conversation, but sometimes you got to be explicit with the folks. You're a fellow professor, so you know how it be. So like, if you can outline some of those ideas for us, so that we can be powered. We know that this Bama Brawl is not just something where we coped with in a celebratory way with Black Twitter and Black socials and our peoples, even from the kitchen table to the social media table, but that it's also very meaningful for the actual work that we're doing in terms of Black liberation ultimately.
I'll keep it simple, and I think there are some lessons again to pull from that whole melee. I won't even call it a melee, from that whole defense of the brother who was attacked. And the thing that just continues to resonate with me, that I think we can apply in our anti-racist or anti-racism work, is resilience. We know that anti-racism inherently involves being actively engaged. And when you're actively engaged in this type of work, you're going to seemingly take a lot of L's, right? And so we have to be resilient and to keep pressing forward, knowing that it is the steady drip of water that wears the hole in the rock, and not necessarily the rush that sometimes can do it for us. So that's what I would leave people with, is to lean into creating, establishing, maintaining your level of resilience in this work that we're doing.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Brother Benny.
For me, I think I got to go back to that amazing definition of emotional safety that you gave. Because the I trust myself was really what hit it for me. Emotional safety is not just about feeling safe from the external world, right? But it's understanding that white supremacy is a psychological conditioning that's impacting our psyche, right? How we feel about ourselves. So it's not just I am threatened, it's also I am threatening, right? And if we have these mindsets of, seeing ourselves through the lens of, black, or from white, the lens of white people, the whole like black skin white mask, we're gonna go to a point of damaging ourselves, right? And not only that, but we're gonna be in a place of emotional danger, because when we're supposed to come to the rescue of our brothers and sisters, we're too busy thinking about, oh, what if this happens to me? What if I look threatening? What if, and that prevents us from acting. So what I really took was that emotional safety doesn't just encompass safety from the external world in terms of like, physical violence and emotional violence and all of that, but it also means, how do I safeguard myself, my heart, from the conditioning of white supremacy, so that I know who I am, right? And not only is the resilience piece that the doc mentioned important, but how do we build in measures of self and community care so that we're taking care of each other, right? So we're taking care of ourselves and we're keeping ourselves whole, because the fight ain't over, right? Liberation is still awaiting. Resistance is still needed. And so we have to do a good job of taking care of ourselves, because we can't make it easy on white supremacy. It's already weathering us left and right with all the different racial traumas that we're experiencing. And so it's really understanding that piece and having a ritual or something that you use to protect yourself and to replenish yourself. But at the same time, like, we also have to go back to the ways in which, like, when we talk about liberation, where are we not standing up for each other, right? Where are we silent? When are we quiet, right? And so in these areas, it's understanding that we need to be as supportive as we were today, or during this during this incident, when our people are experiencing pain, suffering, in their everyday lives. So, for me, Black men have to stand up when Black women are getting murdered by this medical system at 3 to 4 times, the rate. It means we need to stop this division, this, the nonsense that we see on social media of people spreading, discord and hate between Black people, Black men, Black women, Black queers, right? Because we're all falling into the same traps of white supremacy. And if we indoctrinate ourselves into those, traps, then we don't even need white people to uphold white supremacy at that point, right? And so we have to be a safe place for each other. And the only way we could do that is by resisting the conditioning of white supremacy and the ways that it makes us treat ourselves and each other poorly. And it's all, in the understanding that this is all psychological, conditioning. And so maybe you got to take care of yourself, right? Maybe you got to get it out, because, we're all being conditioned. It's not just white people. Everybody in this society is being conditioned. So we got to do some self-work to make sure that we're a safe place for ourselves and that we're a safe place for other people in our community.
Oh, that is so powerful. Can you mute, brother? Yeah, that is just powerful. Thank you. Just really highlighting this issue of safety and what it means on an individual level, internally, externally, but then also on a larger level when it comes to building community, but also interrogating what community is. Because I don't know if the brother that jumped into the water and swam across the Atlantic Ocean to help the uncle that was getting beat was gay or disabled, was a person with disability, right? It didn't matter if all the other people who came to the fore, were top earners, or they were low earners, or they were on Medicaid or on food stamps or SNAP, or so from a class standpoint, it didn't matter. We had Black women that were doing the genius work of taping and recording and documenting. You had Black men that came to across gender, and the rest of it. So we don't know who was trans in all of that was going on. We don't, it didn't matter, to your point, Community is communities, all the things. And we need an Issa Rae philosophy, which is that I am voting for everyone Black. I am supporting, we just need to apply the Issa Rae method right there. Okay, I don't care who you sleep with. I don't care who you worship or not worship. I don't care what is between your legs. I don't care, what your deal is. You Black, you my brother, you my sister, you my sibling, you're in trouble. I got you. I may not agree with you, but if you are under threat, and threat, as we talked about, we need to, we unpack that threat, that violence is not just the interpersonal, somebody is beating you, absolutely, right? We think about all the brothers and sisters and siblings that pull up on the road when they see that a Black person is pulled over by police, right? We've seen this, or some of us have even done it. We pull up and watch with our cell phone in case some mess pop up. We're documenting, we're recording, we're getting the license plate, we're getting the badge numbers. We take care of ourselves. And so, absolutely. But what Brother Benny is calling, what I'm hearing from you, Brother Benny, is that that's true, and that energy needs to be scaled up. When we talk about Black maternal mortality, that's violence. And so, how do we preserve safety inside of that? And come to the end when we talk about Brother True talked about the reproductive justice movement. And so we have Black non-birthing people that should be also speaking up, there. If Black trans people are getting killed, Black gay people are under threat, and laws are being put together against them, and we need those who are cisgendered and heterosexual still need to stand up and say no, right? That's my sibling. Hail to the no. When we do this, is what is not wanted of us. Because when we stand up like this, it is especially terrifying for that status quo of white supremacism and anti-Blackness. So I just want to lift that up. I'm going to round up with rounding thoughts, but we want to hear from Not That Christina, who has been waiting patiently. So Not That Christina, you have just a couple of moments to share your spiel, talk your talk, and then we will round up the space. And again, thank you to everyone that's taken the time to hang with us. This was an impromptu move, and I can't believe I was like, it would just probably be me and Brother Benny just talking into the void, and that's okay because it'll be recorded and be on YouTube and it'll be I am just really moved that any of you showed up, and not only showed up but showed out with incredible contributions, incredible analysis, and just very thoughtful, critical, in-depth, and loving. And so thank you. So Not That Christina, you have a couple of minutes and then we will round up because my husband has texted me 6 times that he needs me. So I better go find out what that man wants. Okay. Go ahead.
I don't have much to say. I just want to say thank you for holding the space. I've been trying to make sense of what I saw, what people have been talking about, what other spaces have been talking about. And thank you for just making it make sense for me. Even though I don't identify as Black, I just want to say thank you for providing that Afrocentric perspective, and it's really making things just clear. Thank you. That's all I want to say.
Oh no, thank you. That is huge. I appreciate that because as someone who is really passionate about communication and education, I one of my insecurities, I'm always open to I believe vulnerability is power. So I'm always opening with vulnerability when I can. Is I always wonder, are the things we're talking about, is how is it coming across? Is it making sense, especially for someone who may not necessarily have a well-formed foundation in these ideas that we espouse. So to hear that feedback, to say it's making sense to you is incredibly meaningful. So thank you for hanging out and taking the time and making sure that your hand was raised and you got called on just to say that. That means a lot to us. So I appreciate you. And so with that, again, thanks everyone. In closing, we have, and in summary, we have done this great job of the last 2 hours of recapping what happened. The Bama Brawl, baby. It's called the Bama Brawl. So I'm gonna call it moving forward, okay? Courtesy of Dr. Leonard, honey. And so, yes, the Bama Brawl that occurred this Saturday, all right? Other people have been calling it the Battle of the Sweet Tea Party out, just all kinds of, everything. And there are 3 million, 1,000 billion just tweets and memes, honey. And this happened on Saturday. a black dock worker got attacked by white folks that didn't want to move their boat, literally had nerve to lay hands on him. He threw that hat in the air. This is now, I told people I'm going to be carrying a hat in my purse everywhere now, anything that go down, because as you can see, I often wear scarves. So it's going to be one of these scarves or a hat in my purse, because this is clearly our bat signal, honey. And I would just send it up in the air, and I know folks are going to just rise from the ground like the Thriller, Michael Jackson Thriller video. I don't know how many of y'all are old enough to have watched that and seen, you know, where all the corpses rose from the ground, honey. I started dancing. Okay, so we gonna have the help coming from the ground, from the water, from the air, from the trees, from everywhere, to protect. And that's what happened. And you know, we had brothers swimming, okay, full clothed, faster than Michael Phelps to come to the rescue. Everybody came together, and white folks on those docks that historically where was the location, the site of enslaved Africans being sold like objects, like chattel, like animals, even worse than animals, right? And on those docks, in that spot, you know, black folks told white folks, you shall not pass. You shall not hit. You shall not violate our bodies, our human dignity. You're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. This person is doing it their job, and you feel you can, all of you, right? And somebody, I would say this real quick. Somebody tweeted about this, and I said, thank you, brother, for that insight. And they said, if people did not come to the rescue, do you know what will have happened to that man? Do you know what? It was the same thing that happened to the brother that was unhoused on subway in New York, where that the ex-Marine or whatever just went at him, and nobody intervened to say, no, this life is of value. You cannot do this. You cannot do this. And we know very, very clearly that if it was the other way around, because of this socialization and conditioning that we've all been talking about inside of systemic and structural and cultural anti-blackness and white supremacism, people would have jumped to rescue that white body. But a black body is normalized as of no value and no dignity, and therefore worthy of being perpetuated in violence. That is the norm. And so thank you, God, that we have black people on Saturday that said, nope, that's not the movie we're writing today. And they corrected it. And so we talked about, again, that event and how it has taught us lessons of interrogating ideas around what is considered violence. And violence is not just the interpersonal blow by blow, but there's structural and systemic and cultural violence when we normalize or we pathologize black bodies and normalize black bodies as the natural recipients of violent acts, whether interpersonally through, again, physical blows, but then also structurally as being deprived of economic and financial opportunities for safety, opportunities for progress and abundance, opportunities for growth, to just be, right? We talked about how safety and what emotional safety looks like and means, and it is really that trusting in yourself and being able to be all of who you are and know that you'll be seen, valued, respected, celebrated in whatever space that you are in, and that you need to cultivate that. We need to cultivate that in our relationships and in the village that we build. We get to create that for ourselves. We learned about the power of resilience as we ground ourselves in history, and we stand on the shoulders of our ancestors who themselves fought and resisted and were revolutionaries even just through survival, that we should be here. And this is across the diaspora, whether the continent of Africa, in the Caribbean, and in the Americas, North, Central, South, the whole thing, and even beyond, even onto Europe, that their very survival was resistance, but that they also fought and rebelled every chance that they got. And we need to be respectful of that, right? We also learned the lessons, and this is what we learned from Doc and from Brother Benny, that it is okay to diversify our action portfolio, our portfolio of resistance, our portfolio of liberation and abolition, that it can also include fighting back, and that we can do it together. We can do it together because together is how we win. The collective, the community, that is how we win. And capitalism and its emphasis on individualism is exactly the antidote to that. That is what breaks it down and renders us what? Ineffective, right? But that we are effective and powerful when we are together. And so collective action, we should not be afraid to stand up and fight. That we need all forms of action when it comes to achieving our liberation inside of that collective action. All right. And that again, that we need to be critical in our reflection. We need to ask ourselves and interrogate the narratives that we are presented with, and have that Issa Rae philosophy of we are having the back of all the people that are Black. We do need to undo our own conditioned, how will I say, isms of white supremacism, our own internalized heterosexism or homophobia, our own internalized classisms and elitism, our own internalized ableisms, right? We need to be able to hold space that, look, we are incredibly diverse community of Black folks, incredibly diverse, but we are also we don't have to be uniform to be unified, and that we are more unified than we're told that we are, and that we need to not aim at the crabs in the basket, but the baskets that have encapsulated the crabs and set them crabs free so they can be their best crab, live their best crab life in the ocean. And ain't nobody pulling nobody there down, back or backwards in the ocean where they belong, right? It's about the environment. And we get to be effective by creating better environments, equitable environments, just environments, environments free of anti-Blackness and anti-racism and white supremacism, one day at a time, okay? And I'll end on this because we always end on this. And the self-care is critical. That our taking care of our mental health and our well-being, practicing trauma mitigation strategies, understanding again that this is trauma. This is part of trauma, and a lot of our Black Twitter and our humor, which is inherently amazing and awesome, but also is a response to trauma. Frankly, it is an adaptive coping response as well, and recognizing that for what it is. So therefore, always being in the process of healing, but through joy and laughter and humor is also really critical as part of this fight. Yes, it is, and we have to be intentional about that. So go ahead and share them GIFs. Share them memes, go ahead, okay? Share them tweets and posts, right? Keep sending them to me, DMing them to me, posting and tagging me and texting me, honey, because I have done absolutely nothing today but crack up over all the things. And I posted some in the space comment, and then I posted some just on Twitter in general. So, and y'all need to tell me what we're calling this app, Bird app. Is it still a Bird app? Is it an X app? Are we Xing? Are we tweeting? Are we posting? And Black Twitter, what is the new Black Twitter name? Is it Black Xer? Or what is happening? Okay. We need to have that space coming soon to a theater near you. So with that being said, y'all, before my husband, sends me divorce papers, let me go ahead and jump off of this social media app over here and say thank you for being part of my coping strategy of the Bomber Brawl, and really providing community and that I hope was emotionally and psychologically safe for all involved, specifically for Black people, because that's always my priority. And that, you go forth and take these lessons and celebrations and that it feeds you. It's of value to you. It feeds your soul. It feeds your mind. It feeds your work. And that we continue to build community even beyond this moment. Okay, even beyond this very moment, that this continues to grow. So I thank you, Brother Benny. Thank you, Doc. Thank you, everybody that came to speak. True, and not that Christina and everybody else that's in the space, in the room, wherever you are. Go ahead and keep commenting. And y'all on YouTube, as you watch this on the replay, go ahead and comment, what spoke to you, what didn't, what do you agree with, not agree with, what wasn't clear, what do you want to see moving forward, what should come out of this, etc. Go nuts in the comment. That's how we learn. And before I forget, in terms of an action step, I put in the space tweet, a GoFundMe. So what is something that you can do right now? Well, this brother, Stephen Clayton Thomason, aka Clayton Wildcat Thomason, has a band that performs on the Harriet II riverboat. I believe this is the riverboat that the dock walker, the brother who's a dock walker, was trying to make space for, I believe. And so they have started a GoFundMe to support the members of the riverboat and their passengers who were attacked by the racist mob. So you are welcome to support that. There are other GoFundMes, I believe, available. I believe that one of our people was arrested. The white folks were arrested, so ching for that. But I believe at least one of us was also arrested. So I believe there's a GoFundMe. So anybody finds that, can you please post that and tag myself, tag brother Benny, hashtag AI Art, which is Anti-Racism in Action Roundtable, so that we can support that. But we at least found this one for you that Brother Clayton Thomason has started. But if there's any other efforts that you're aware of that is going on to support the folks down there, please share, tag, hashtag, all that good stuff, so that, again, that's another form of community. Activism looks different ways for different people. Sometimes you can donate, sometimes you can open doors, sometimes you can do. So you can be a doer, a donor, or a door opener. And so for those of us that may not be able to do or open doors, we can donate. And this is one of the ways we can do that. So you can also open doors by just sharing the word. So as you know, these resources and opportunities, please share for us. But in the meantime, the link is in the chat, and I'm going to put it on YouTube in a second as well as we close out, for you to support Brother Clayton as they support the members of the riverboat who was attacked by the white folks in Bama, who thought that they were something and, fucked around and found out. With that being said, have a great day. Have a great night. I love you. Make sure you love yourselves, love each other, and build community and build power. We appreciate you. And with that, we're just going to play some music as we bow out. Take care.